My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and we are back
Again
for a series of the Great British Bake Off.
Why, hello, people, and welcome to the Washing Up Podcast. I left this special message to be played now when I popped in last week to tell Kristie that I'm bequeathing her corgis. I wish you all a very merry bake-off.
Oh, that was lovely. Her Madge came in, Her Madge came in to apparently tell you you're getting corgis.
That's great, and so nice of her just to leave that little recording for us to play at the beginning.
Yeah,
She
look,
said we had a little special something.
I mean, look, it's been quite good, obviously. Now, for those who haven't been listening, we've also been doing the Great Canadian Baking Show. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be referencing that because we know the audiences are probably different. But instead, we're back to talk about the Great British Bake Off. Now, yes, I'm going to preamble this whole thing with, I know this happened last year.
Yes, this is 2020-ville.
But thank you, Foxtel, for deciding in the middle of pandemic what we didn't need was Bake Off. Because that would have been a good idea.
Who needs fucking sweetness and light when the world's turning to shit?
No, apparently we didn't need this. So, thank you for holding off on this.
No Bake Off for you, Australia.
Really,
because it's 2020.
Really appreciated that. They did show a little bit of Canadian, must be fair.
Yeah, okay.
But season one.
Season one, nothing new.
They're still 3 whole seasons behind.
And they didn't catch us up so they could give us fresh seasons this year.
No, exactly. And they didn't bother to publicise it. But anyway, we're getting in the nitty-gritty, and we're sweetness and fucking light, Kristie. What are we?
Sweetness and fucking light.
Exactly. And so we are back to do the Great British Bake Off. And it is season 11, or if you're listening in Canada, because there might be some people listening in Canada.
Yeah.
On Netflix, it's, I believe, what they're referring to is, it's not even the 8th season, it's the 8th collection. I believe is that's actually how Netflix is referring to them as collections.
What?
Because they remember. So to explain to people as to why that happens. Netflix doesn't start from season 1 of the Great Britain. America didn't start showing it until season 4
okay.
or 5, I want to say. So what happened in America was that they didn't start showing until about season 4. Mm-hmm. And so then they named season 4 season 1 and 2, and so it all got out of order. So when we were talking, for example, to our friends over at Jen and Kate, when I was talking to them, we had to say what seasons, the Nadia season, rather than go by season titles.
This always happens to the Americans. I mean, for a democratic country who went, no, fuck off England, they really stick to the imperial measurements, it's like, why do you always have to make it so we have to convert stuff?
Everything.
Why can't you get onto the metric system? Come on.
This is another metric system issue born to life.
It really is.
Right, everyone else is like, this is season 11, and American Netflix is like, have season 8, have collection 8. It's not even a thing.
What's the formula to calculate the conversion of of British to American?
If anyone has the calculator out there, because I look up all the time, you have to look up the pounds to kilograms and those sorts of things.
Yeah. Does it have Google Bake Off conversion? Bake Off to baking show conversion?
Yes, Bake Off to baking show conversion. If it's called Bake Off versus if it's called baking show, how do you convert those numbers over? You need to find out. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is the 11th season, and there has been a change in the tent.
Yes,
so
the tent has changed location.
First of all, the tent did change location. That was a COVID protocol.
Yeah, obviously, I presume to get them out of a COVID hotspot.
The other main reason, however, I think it's more to get them into the bubble.
Oh, okay. So to have the location where they've got enough accommodation. Obviously, a grand mansion for the hosts and judges to live together.
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Maybe they moved it close to their house.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later because I think we need to posit exactly what judge and host lockdown life would be. But in the meantime, they moved everything. I think to get them close. To get them close, yes, to where they were staying. Now,
and it's the only way to go because they went to Essex.
Oh God.
Vajazzles for everyone.
The other big change in there, obviously, is Sandy Togsvig announced at the end of the last season she was kind of done because she was doing too many other things. And look, I love Sandy Togsvig, but it kind of felt... Look, we said it at the time.
Yeah.
Didn't really like the last series of British that much. And Sandy kind of towards the end...
Just phoning it in.
She was doing it because she was contractually obligated.
Yeah, and look, we fell for her because it spread too thin. And I think it was good that she made that decision at the time because could you imagine if it came up to COVID? She would have to choose what she was doing.
Yeah, couldn't have done it. But What we got instead, I was a little bit worried when they announced it. Although, again, thinking back on it now, probably shouldn't have been. Matt Lucas. Now, I will freely admit, I really don't like Little Britain.
No?
But Matt Lucas is
You're
also...
the computer, are you? You say no.
Yeah, I am the computer saying no. But Matt Lucas is also one of Noel...
Are you also the only gay in the village?
But Matt Lucas is also one of Noel Fielding's oldest friends. Oh, shit, she's going to go the whole time. Oh, God.
Okay.
I really don't like Little Britain, so you have no idea how much that's irking me. But yeah, Matt Lucas is one of Noel Fielding's oldest friends. So I think that putting those two in there together is just perfect. And how interesting was it to watch Noel Fielding being the straight man?
I do love this dynamic. Like, I think it's the first time we've had two male hosts in a baking off. That's how I'm saying bake off and baking show, like together, baking off.
Well, I mean, this is Bake Off. We can just say Bake Off.
Because bake show sounds like it's... Stupid. Baking off sounds so much better. It is also the first time I think we've had a new host come in with an old host. Like, we usually have two new hosts together.
Yes.
Not so I love that dynamic where Noel's like, oh, come on, it's like the new student at school and they get buddied
up with teach the experienced one teaching the new one the ways of the school. That's where you smoke behind the toilets. That's where you know all the little tricks that you need to learn.
If you get here at 11 a.m. to the canteen, there'll still be Ovaltinis. Like
that was key for you.
No, it was more about the pizza. Like, you know the little pocket pizzas?
Yes.
Yeah, you get those.
It was vital.
Otherwise it'd sell out.
So we had a really interesting sort of dynamic. Now, we'll come back and we'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute, but let's introduce you to these bakers.
Yes.
So we have Dave. Dave is an armed security guard. And
a wheelchair pram assembler.
A pram assembler. Now, I thought that Dave...
Father to be.
I thought Dave, and we'll get into it in a minute, but I thought, especially with his choice of what he baked in the first challenge, I thought that this was a man counting down his last couple of months of no child in the house.
Espresso, chocolate, vodka, tick.
Exactly. So, and then we got Hermione.
I loved her, and I loved her little stint, like her little thing to camera with her child out at a park where she jumps on his skateboard and the kid's obviously like, what are you doing, Mum? You have never done this before. And she's like, shh, don't tell the producers. I'm just getting stuff for the TV. I want to be cool.
I was a bit devastated.
Cool, Mum.
Yeah, I was a bit devastated. I was a bit devastated about that because she jumped on and then they cut away. And I'm like, no. The good bit is what happens next. Because, she's never done that before.
You know why they couldn't do that? Because they're now setting into funniest home videos. Trying to win themselves a camcorder.
Then we have Laura, who's a digital manager. Laura's really... We'll get into Laura a little bit more soon.
I adored her.
Then we got Linda, who is a retirement living team leader. Linda looked a little bit at sea. She looked like she was trying to organise a bunch of activities for the seniors groups, and
she honestly lived at sea as well. Like, she lived by the sea.
Yeah, she was all over it. Then we had Loraya, who had an interesting...
She's got Linda in there, and she's organising the between-take activities for everyone. Like, that's handy.
Possibly.
Do you think when they were casting this, it wasn't so much about baking skills, they've just gone, we need some people to run the activities, and you can be on Bake Off as well. And Linda's like, okay.
Okay, so I think they've done that. First of all, they had a couple of accountants in there, so obviously people need to manage their finances during COVID.
Yeah.
Then we get Loraya. Loraya's a radiographer, so if you were desperate enough, like Loraya could have done that, although we'll come to poor Loraya in a minute because opening with bubblegum is not smart.
That was a bold choice.
Then we have my choice for my personal favourite person in the tent. And I'm not even saying this is a baker because I think there's one so far who I think is clearly the best baker. Mm-hmm. But my favourite person is Lottie. I am living for Lottie right now. First of all, she's a fucking pantomime producer. Oh, no, she isn't. Oh, yes, she is.
She's the most... It's not like she doesn't have a sense of humour. But she's bordering on cheerless.
She has the greatest sense of humour. She is so dry with that sense of humour, and the way that she's just like you know what she reminds me of?
What?
Put her in Parks and Rec. Mm-hmm. Put her.
She's April.
She is. She's entirely April in Parks and Rec, and you know what? I'm here for it. Yeah, Lottie was fucking incredible.
She is that. She's got this Emma Stone-esqueness to her. She's cool, but still, like, just that juxtaposition of her being a pantomime producer. But I presume the pantomime world is like cutthroat because it's a big business over there in the UK. I mean, they get like home and away stars that go and do panto season. Well, they used to.
You know, they get people like Ricky Gervais. Ooh, I'm so bent out of shape. Ooh, Anyway, we had Mac, who's another accountant, in there. Then we had the Marks. Now, for the record, we're going to be really kind to everybody.
Yeah.
We're going to pronounce Mark with a C and Mark with a K. So we'll pronounce the C and the K so you get the difference. Okay. So the first one was Mark, who's a bronze resin sculptor. Obviously useful in these pandemic times, but I mean,
he's definitely a first responder.
They didn't focus on it. Yeah. But you know, obviously he's obviously got one leg. I'd like to think that he crafted the other one himself, and it's not carbon fibre.
Bronze.
I'd like to think he has a bronze one that he's made himself.
A bronze resin leg.
I hope he has. So that was Mark. The other one is Mark. Now, again, you can hear the difference in my pronunciation clearly. This Mark is a project manager, which project manager is always that job title I feel that you get when they don't really know what you do. Mm-hmm. What he's a project manager. He manages projects. He floats around the project and says, do stuff, and people do it. Then Peter. Now, Peter, first of all,
has a gluten intolerant brother.
Yep. He's an accounting and finance student. You know who Peter is?
Who?
Hello, Brandon Black. How are we?
Oh, my God. He is.
Hashtag let Brandon bake. So, and Great Australian Bake Off is coming back. So, you know, Brandon, there's no excuse now.
No.
So
get cracking those eggs.
Peter is an example of what Brandon should be.
Creaming them with sugar.
There we go. Then we have possibly, and let's face it, British Bake Off has a long, storied history of eccentrics.
Yes.
But Rowan is on another dimension.
I love him.
He's amazing. I mean, we're going to get into some of his stuff.
He's a visionary. He's a baking visionary. You know, this tent can't contain him. He's come in so philosophical, like it's week one, bake one. And I swear blind, he's like, Paul, your existential stare is not going to get me because I live in philosophy.
Except as we got to the end of it, Paul Hollywood did say to him, you've promised a lot of things. You haven't given us anything you've promised us, but you've promised a lot of things. And Paul called him out on it, and Rowan's like, yeah, close enough.
Maybe he's secretly a project manager.
Maybe he is. And then Sura, who's a hospital pharmacy dispenser, and boy, did Sura have a week. That's the ultimate week.
Sura was 2020 in a person in one episode in the tent. Like, it went from, like, oh, cool, she looks cool. Oh, yeah, she's a pharmacy dispenser. You could see she was a bit nervous. There was a bit of nervous energy going on. To, oh, my fucking God. To, woo. To, phew, she's safe. There was just highs and lows and toppling cakes.
And creamy middles and...
jammy centres.
So we had Noel and Matt, obviously, in there, and I thought that their introduction was quite good. First of all, Matt Lucas doing his Boris Johnson. And I loved the bit where he talked about the different areas depending on your height. And did because this, so to give you a bit of backstory, this episode went to air immediately following Boris Johnson's first speech on the pandemic.
Holy shit, so it would have been just as confusing.
So, yeah, it was, you know, the whole speech thing with him, you know, like be careful but not careful. Be brave but not brave. Be bold but not bold. That was Boris.
And I loved him, like, you know, bake, if you can bake in a tent, bake in a tent.
But don't bake in a tent. So, and I loved when he referred to Noel as Noel, the lady in the funky dress. Now, they did announce that the bakers had volunteered to live in a bubble. because it was the only way they were going to be able to actually run this show.
I'd like to take that literally, that someone is in charge of blowing the bubble.
That could be
like a large...
someone from Blown Away.
Yes, someone from Blown Away, blowing a big bubble, not made of detergent, but of glass. And just like in the Simpsons movie, they just come and lower a big glass dome over Essex.
And Tom Hanks is selling it.
Yes.
Tom Hanks is there explaining to everyone that, the Bake Off people have lost their credibility, so they're borrowing some of mine. So
just this chopper flying over down hall and depositing the last large dome.
Now, it is a cake week to start because thankfully British have come again. They've previously moved away from that. Thankfully, they've come to their senses. You start with a cake week in British.
They're like, it's uncertain times. We have to provide certainty.
And what is more certain than a fucking Battenberg?
I know, they're like, let's not go too crazy here. Let's give the people at home something that they're familiar with.
Now, I've given my views on Battenberg cakes before. Mm-hmm. I hate Battenberg cakes.
And so do several of the bakers, as we discovered.
Which is one of the things I absolutely love.
No wonders up to Laura. Do you like a Battenberg? No.
Everybody had this whole conversation that nobody really likes a Battenberg cake. They couldn't find anyone who goes, I love them. Like, no one said they love a Battenberg. Everyone was like, oh, it's got to do it. It's a challenge.
It's basically an overdone Madeira cake. Like, if you just go buy a pound cake, it's going to do the same thing, and you don't have to put up with the marzipan.
Now, thankfully, they all remembered to put the buttercream in the middle. Hey, Jude, how you going from Canadian? And no one tried to carve individual squares, which we've seen before.
Yes.
It's like, but every slice has to be a different pattern. No, it doesn't. One pattern. Now, I loved where they were talking about the challenge, and they got 2 hours, and then Noel's like, you can do this. And he goes, I'm ready for this. On your marks, bake. No. On your marks, get set. Long pause. Bake. And then split the difference.
Split the difference there. Yeah, now what I noticed with these bakes is, like, I'm cool with people going for adventurous, but I just felt that they went in the wrong direction. Like, okay.
Well, we cut to Loraya.
Okay.
She was the first person. Mm-hmm. And I thought Prue Leaf threw up in her mouth.
Like, obviously Loraya hasn't seen Australian Bake Off and hasn't seen a judge's reaction to when someone says, I'm going to flavour this in bubblegum. Now, unless, like, even when you were a kid, right? I don't know if you remember being a kid and going to, I can't remember, it wasn't Baskin and Robbins back then, but it was like an ice cream shop with a whole lot of different flavours. And we'd go and I'd get the rainbow every time because it looked spectacular, but I'd forget it was flavoured bubblegum and it was horrendous.
I think you're thinking the Great New Zealand Ice Creamery, which they used to do that one as part of their hokey pokey flavour.
I was very young. I think it was before we got good ice cream in Australia.
But Loraya doubled down because she said bubblegum and then the other one was creaming soda. And again, Prue has never looked more disgusted with a human being. I thought Prue was going to punch her and throw up all in one.
Like, I like bucking the trend. These days it's all about organic and, like really extracting the flavour from natural produce and blah, blah, blah. I like how she's like, no, fuck that. Way with the future is, artificial. We're going to be printing meat. We're going to be...
We're going to be printing meat.
Cloning grain. We're going to be...
we're going to be flavouring everything with fucking bubblegum. Now they cut over to Laura, who openly just says, I hate marzipan. And I love that Matt Lucas looks at her and goes, well, I'm not sure that'll go in, but it's good to know who you are. Which then led to the conversation around super noodles, which led to my favourite one, which was being homosexual. I have confirmed bachelor super noodles. And she goes, really? I didn't know that. And he goes, well, I help them out on weekends.
Because I think part of Laura's thing is that she volunteers for the Samaritans as well. So she's probably like, I help them out on weekends. And he's come back with I help them out on weekends. How do you volunteer for the gays?
Now, cutting over to my favourite person. Who in their right mind looks at Prue Leaf and goes, you know what? I don't know what it's going to look like. I haven't got it right yet. Lottie is the answer to that question. Who openly turns around to her and goes, don't know what it looks like. It's never worked yet.
But I'm sticking with it.
And then she followed it up by saying that there were problems with it and going, I prefer it like that. And I'm like, veteran. She's watched. She knows.
Yeah. Is it supposed to both taste the same? Yes, of course.
This is exactly what I was after. But again, she said, again, as a Panto producer, she's used to shit going wrong.
I know. It's the glitter cannons aren't working. We'll just stuff it with streamers. We've got no streamers. Aren't there excess pantyhose from last season's Robin Hood? Just use that.
Jason Donovan has passed out again. What are we going to do? That's okay. Go out and find someone else from Neighbours. No one will know.
It's Craig McLachlan. No! Anyone but Craig McLachlan.
Don't let McLachlan near it. We don't want him anywhere near it. Is Alan Kennedy around?
Toadfish.
Where's Toadie? I want Toadie because Donovan is out like a light. So,
is that a tube right here? Phew, it's Harold Bishop.
Oh my God, bouncer. Anyway, so I love that, and I also love the fact that later on when we look at Lottie's colour scheme, she's clearly spent a lot of time in pantomime.
Yeah, she made it look like a sweetie. You know,
it looked very much like a curtain over the top of the panto. Then they cut to Dave, and as I said, this is a man counting down to the end of a childless life by having the chocolate espresso martini with vodka marzipan.
Just before we go to that, I just realised that Lottie missed a trick. Because, you know, at Pantos, they chuck the lollies into the crowd. She could have chucked a Battenberg at the judges to catch.
Well, again, the other thing I would have done is when they criticise her and go, this is a bit too dry. Oh, no, it isn't.
Oh, yes, it is.
Think about it. You could just all season, every time Paul Hollywood criticises you. Oh, no, it isn't. It could have been brilliant.
Anyway, back to
Dave, who's getting drunk on a choc espresso with vodka marzipan. Like, he's just working as much booze as he can before the kid comes.
Titrating, need to be awake now with my espresso, need to be chilled with my vodka.
Then we cut to Mark. Now, again, I'm obviously pronouncing that clearly with the C. So Mark has a sour cherry and choc walnut with rosewater marzipan. And the second he said the word rosewater, I'm like, oh, well, he's in trouble.
Oh, it's just, unless you're super confident and another bold move, coming straight out of the gates, there's no warm-up. These people are just nah, I'm doing the bubble gum. Nah, I'm carving it like a starburst. It's never worked. Nah, I'm just going to use some rosewater. Balls to the wall, people.
What I really appreciate...
No fear. It's like COVID's come to town. This could be...
YOLO. YOLO. Yes, it really was the YOLO of Bake Off episodes, wasn't it?
This is the end of humanity as we know it, and I'm just going it all out.
This is, now that I'm thinking about it, this is probably the most YOLO first episode I've ever seen. It's
no one wants to go home first, but fuck, they're giving it a red hot go.
Everyone's like, fuck this, it's the middle of a pandemic. YOLO, everybody, YOLO. So I love the fact that he said, well, you can possibly call me Hamish, and they proceeded to not even vaguely pretend to call him Hamish.
I know. It's maybe he could have gone, hey, Mark, Mark Hamill, just call me Luke or Skywalker. Go for a cool name. Choose a cool name.
But I mean, we have Mark.
Choose anything, Marky Mark.
We have Mark, and Mac. So, what an effort. And the first time I saw the name Mac written, I thought, is that another Mark? They've just gone, no, take a letter out.
Sounds like a 90s...
Mark and Mac. Tony. It's a Tony tribute band. Mark and Mac. Where's the other one with a question mark next to it to change the inflection?
Mark and Mac?
Mark and Mac? Now, we then got introduced to Peter. Now, again, Peter is 20. Peter is an accounting student. Peter is a badminton bandit. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, he's a young man, but baking-wise, he's an old soul.
He's one of those 60-year-olds wrapped up in the body of a 20-year-old.
And how do we know he's an old soul baking-wise, Kristie? What do all the old souls do in the tent or pavilion or the shed?
They listen to their bakes.
When they're calling for you, listen to your bakes. He is the latest member of the Listen to Your Bakes crew. And he's like, when you listen to them, you can hear that they're cooked. And it didn't steer him wrong.
No, it really didn't. And I feel like the Wiggles, as Noel and Val and everyone start to get to retirement age, they're like, we need to bring in
The new one.
the new ones.
He is the Emma Wiggle.
He's the Emma Wiggle of
Peter is the Emma Wiggle of the series.
Yes.
Now, they then cut to Sura, and the first thing we see of Sura really is her oven. And her Battenberg mixture just pouring out the side of the tin. And she's like, I've never practiced in this tin. I only got it 3 days ago.
Look, unsure if it was an oven or a portal to a hell dimension. It really did look like tentacles and slime were just coming out of that little space.
And then I loved Matt looks at her and goes, so are you a Battenberg fan? And if Sura could have killed him with a look, he would have been dead. She just looked at him like, are you fucking joking me?
Sura is an interesting person. One moment, she's like, sweetness and light. Next moment, she's going to cut you. Like, it's just...
She was ready to kill somebody.
Just about Battenberg. It's like, dude, chill.
Now, Mark, of course, so you can hear the difference. It's crystal clear. Went with a Turkish bazaar inspired thing for Istanbul, obviously, one of his favourite cities.
Constantinople.
No, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Okay.
It's been a long time gone in Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? That's no one's business but the Turks. So I'm not going to do the rest of it. I'm not going to.
No, you're not.
But he's a man from Liverpool with a fondness for Istanbul. I do wonder if he is a Liverpool supporter.
I hope
because
so.
Of course, first of all, Paul Hollywood is a Liverpool supporter. Secondly, most Liverpool supporters have a fondness for Istanbul because we won the Champions League there.
Maybe that's why they liked it. They were actually there for the...
Maybe. That would play it up. If I find out he's an Evertonian, I'll hate him forever. But anyway, now I loved that it was his anniversary.
Yes.
And so it was about have you messaged your wife? Oh, haven't really had the time yet. I've been a bit busy. And I was like,
Playing it cool.
Playing it cool, I see, huh?
That's how you keep it spicy in a marriage.
He's like, playing it cool, playing hard to get. He's like, you don't have to do that after you're married, do you? Now, we went from Mark talking about Istanbul and talking about playing it cool to the waxing lyrical about theories behind Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and a discussion about building a temple.
And playing a flute in a wood.
Rowan is possibly the most fascinating character we've ever seen in a bake-off.
There have been so many, like,
You know you've gone somewhere when Prue Leith is looking at you going, I don't know what you're saying. But it sounds fascinating.
Like, we tend to, like, point out the bakers that overthink stuff, but Rowan has really gone that step further, and I'm sure this Battenberg was going to be a dissertation.
I'm sure he wrote an essay to go alongside it. And when he gave the cake out, he was going to provide the dissertation, possibly on a scroll, possibly on parchment, wax sealed.
He even created a cutting template.
Out of an old CD storage container.
Yes, and I'm glad he did, because it gave no help whatsoever.
I mean, because the problem was, the cutting wasn't the issue. The problem was his sponge was heavy and very raw, to the point where there were liquid melting lakes in the middle of it when he cut the top off it. You're like, that machine just exposed how bad your cakes were, man. He's like, I'm going to have to put it in the microwave.
It's just showing you how thick with thought and philosophy it was just imploding upon itself.
What he missed out on was this idea to talk about the cakes and the temple and make it instead a bit more, sci-fi and make it a portal to a third dimension. Like, you go through the waves of the cake and you're into another dimension.
We're going less history and more new age.
Well, he could have done that. I mean, look, the temple didn't work.
No.
The temple didn't end up happening in the end.
It's gone aliens.
Now, Linda was making an ambulance as a family tribute to her cousin.
Yeah.
And obviously she said, obviously he's no longer with them. The problem was that the way that she did it, first of all, with a Battenberg, you're supposed to have the ends
exposed,
open.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And as Paul said, when he got to the judging, it was very bland and nondescript because it was all closed in, which didn't work. But as I said, lovely tribute.
Yeah.
That bit didn't quite work, though. Then we have Mac, who went, what the fuck is up with this almond marzipan?
Yeah, fuck almonds. I'm with you, Mac. I just feel that bitter aftertaste, Bit too much.
The problem is, though, we went pistachio for the marzipan with then stemmed ginger for the sponge.
Very, like, they're bold flavours. Like
That's a balance and a half, and like trying to get that balance to work.
But again, you know, obviously it's balls to the walls. Bake off one.
YOLO.
Yeah.
So then we got the other comment that we got, which I loved, was we finally had someone I've never made a Battenberg. To which Paul's response was, well, that's handy.
Oh, sarcasm.
So we get to the judging, really, because we moved through all of that.
Yeah.
So, Peter, they loved the look. The texture of the chocolate was lovely. They said the marzipan was beautifully thin. Everything was great.
Yep.
That's what you want. That's a start. Then with Mac, they said that the ginger and the orange and the pistachio didn't work. Just did not work together. Then Hermione, who they said the orange and chocolate went very well together. Orange and chocolate does. Like, that's an easy flavour.
That was a smart choice.
Now, Laura's feedback was, it's not neat and it's very plain. And it's like, ooh. I loved with Dave, they said, the problem was you sold us on this idea of it being an espresso martini. They said, the chocolate's amazing. We can't taste the booze. You should have just told us it was chocolate.
Yeah.
Because we would have gone, great, but you told us it's an espresso martini and we can't taste the booze.
Bugger.
So, they're like, it's the way you sold it to us.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, to get the proper alcohol flavour, like particularly for vodka and stuff, isn't there an essence or something that you
you're
usually
supposed
put
to
in?
use the essence.
Not actual vodka.
No, because vodka, it bakes out.
He really just wanted to drink.
He just told you, this is a man counting down. Now, Linda's, unfortunately, we said, was lacking identity. It was very unfinished as well. It was also overbaked, and it was also bone dry. There might have been a reason at the end of this episode why Linda looked at the camera and just laughed. I mean, that's your first critique.
What the fuck am I still here?
Larea, they said it was striking.
It looked, the colours were gorgeous.
I thought you were about to say gaudy, because that would have also been apt.
Yes, and she covered in the ends of the Battenberg as well.
Now, they said you could smell the bubblegum as you walked up to it.
Oh.
It was bone dry, and they said it was very thick. And when you looked at the marzipan, like, it was really thick marzipan. It was almost as thick as the sponge. They said the flavour was really intense as well. They said you got to be very light touch with that. They said she went very heavy. Now, Mark. Okay, so Mark, obviously you heard the pronunciation difference. Marzipan was a bit thick, and the pomegranate that he had in there, which I didn't even realise he had pomegranate.
No.
But neither did the judges, because they said they couldn't taste it. But they said the pistachio was nice. And then that was followed by Mark. Again, you can hear the difference. The sour cherry was really good. They said that his display was a bit too busy, but again, the biggest problem was rose water.
Yeah. And Mark was he was very eager to be positive, and the judges was like, no.
But your rose water, man. But your rose water.
Yeah.
Then we cut to, again, my favourite human, Lottie, who they said was a bit messy, but there were very vibrant colours and very good flavours. Mm-hmm. The problem was, they said, it tasted the same. And again, she tried to cover it. They went... Yeah. Originally, they went, are they supposed to be the same? And she's like, yes. Yes. And she's like, no, the yellow one's supposed to be custard. And they're like, can't taste it. They taste great, but it just tastes the same.
Yes.
But they did say that her jam was also great. Rowan. Now, Rowan covered it in the way that you suggested he should have.
Yes.
He called it a deconstructed temple.
Well, he could have just called it ruins, like ancient ruins.
Now, they said it looked neat.
Temple as you'd see it now.
Exactly. You know, as I frequently say whenever I'm teaching ancient history, they didn't build ruins. So whenever you see a movie, like one of my favourite tropes in movies is the Colosseum, like all decayed in ruins. I'm like, they didn't build ruins. Like, it had a canopy. You could move the floor up and down. You could put boat races in the middle of it. It's the first all-purpose stadium. It wasn't built as a ruin. They didn't half build it and go, you know what? That's it. That column's broken, leave it.
Think of Acer Arena as it was, not as it is now.
Good point. So with Rowan's, they said it looked neat, but Paul could pick a very heavy sponge from a mile away. And this is the thing, he cut open, he goes, there's moisture trapped in there trying to get out. And then Sura. They said it looked really pretty. The decoration was nice, and she glazed as well, and they liked the glaze. And again, the lemons and the stuff that she did on the top were absolutely beautiful.
I think she put her time, like she used her time wisely.
Yes.
And that's what I found with the people who produce something good like Peter. Okay, the flavours were good and their designs were good because they didn't overthink it. They didn't want to go too complex, they wanted to show a bit of advancement but not...
Well, it was like, as they said with Peter, and again, we'll talk about it in more depth when we get to the showstopper, but in the showstopper, he went with very basic flavours. But as they said, he did such a good job of them.
Yeah.
And, just nailed them. And that's what you have to... In week one, later on in the competition, you want elevation. Here, pick something really good, really simple, really well-known, and just do it well.
And you can actually think about it, with the showstopper, sorry, no we're jumping forward, but there are several different elements that they are looking for. Okay, the cake has to be edible and delicious, but also the construction has to be good and your decoration has to be good. So that's a third of the time dedicated, or a third of your skills dedicated to each of them.
Yep.
So you're not going to be a master of, you want to be a jack of all trades there. You don't want to be just a master of construction, because otherwise they're eating plywood.
That's not fun.
Or just a master of decoration. They're just eating fondant.
Exactly, and nobody just wants to be... And that was one of the things... And
Sura definitely doesn't want to be a master of cake.
No, and we'll get there. So
cake.
So let's get there.
Yes.
So the technical. Now, it's a Paul Hollywood technical.
It is.
6 miniature upside-down pineapple cakes, and they had 90 minutes to complete the challenge.
Yep.
Now... They cut to everyone, and where some of them are going, I've never heard of it, I've heard of it, I've made them, I've eaten them, I like them. They cut to Peter, and Peter gives one of my great trope lines that I love in Bake Off, where he goes, I think I made these in school. And that sounds impressive until you remember he's 20. He probably made them 2 years ago.
Home ec for him was just a memory that he made.
It's very recent.
3 years ago. Let's just say that he's been alive as long as the 2000s have been around. That feels like 5 years ago. 2000 to me, I'm that was when I was 20. That was only 21 years ago.
It's really embarrassing when I'm talking to students and I'm talking about the Sydney Olympics and realise they weren't born anyway. So,
Peter,
I know. So.
He might have been conceived around that time.
What I really liked in the conversation around this, Britain was going for gold. What I like about this was they said that the trick with this one is the balance of the caramel, and then the other thing that seems really simple but was the tricky bit was making sure they come out of the tin properly. Because you've got to put the caramel in first, then you've got to put a maraschino cherry and the pineapple, then the cake batter goes in. But if you put too much caramel, it just sticks. And if you don't grease the tins, they stick.
And, something that we observed was that all three challenges were essentially sponges. There were choices that you could make in the showstopper. But, in this particular week, and under the circumstances too, because we have to remember how fucking nuts COVID was for everyone, I think it was solid to set something that was pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but required technique.
Yes,
and
they needed to have enough technique.
And judgment, you've got to judge how much caramel, how far you're going to take that caramel.
And that was the thing, the first whip around they did in the kitchen was about the caramel, and you had a couple of people sort of trying to work out how to make it so, I want to stir it, but I don't want to touch it yet because I need it to take off, but it needs to hurry up. You had some people getting it a little bit of colour and going, I'm worried about that. Some people taking it a bit further and going, it's smelling a bit like burning, but it's not burning, so I've got to leave it there.
Burning.
A couple of other people going, I'm not quite sure if I've taken it too far. And then for all of those people not sure, you have Linda going, I think I might have taken this a bit too far, and it's really dark.
It looked like a shot of espresso.
That was what Dave needed in his espresso martini.
Did, just like a shot of Linda's caramel.
Shot of Linda's caramel would have done him a world of good.
There's nice caramel bitter notes.
But don't worry about Dave, because Dave tried to melt things. So he's like, can I put the pan on this? Puts the pan, melts through it. No, I can't put the pan on this. It's like, just put the bench top, dude. That's what the bench top's there for. Why are we picking random shit to put the pan on? Now, cut to my favourite individual, and Noel, as they're talking about, she's like, I don't have time to be dealing with these intricate little things. I want to make a slab cake. It's a big slab. I just want a big slab. One we can all just, put it on the table and eat it together? Yes, on the table, eat it together. Yeah, we can eat it together like wild animals, just ripping it apart with our hands.
Just imagining this kind of like, in Mean Girls where they're looking at the mall and everyone's turning into different animals. Just like Noel suddenly becoming a hyena and...
Oh, I just like the idea of Noel and Lottie standing back just going, make a slab cake and we'll eat it like wild animals. And But Lottie doesn't bat an eyelid. She's like, of course, that makes perfect sense to me.
I presume that's what they did later that night.
Exactly. Like, just sat around in COVID, COVID safe.
Yeah.
But like ripping cake apart. Big table worth of cake ripping apart.
It was like, it had to be a... God, how many people are there? Like, essentially a 100-metre cake to get the 1.5-metre distance between people. So you get your slab of cake as well as keep a safe distance.
Exactly. Really important. Now, Mark, again, pronunciation key, hadn't buttered his malts. And he realised that after the fact. And he's like, oh, well, they're going to be a bit difficult to get out. And all I can say to you is, well, yeah, they will be a little bit difficult to get out. Mm-hmm. It could be worse. They could be Linda.
I think her pineapple ring was thicker than the cake.
That's what she said at one point. I've made them a pineapple fritter. It was Linda. They were flat. They were burnt. The pineapple came off them and she had to put the pineapple back on. They were very squat. And she tried to... She goes, I'll just push these back together with my hands. And Paul Hollywood commented in the judging, these look like someone's pushed them back together. And I'm like, because they did.
It's like when someone takes a bite of someone's steak and doesn't want them to know, like just a little piece of it, and they just kind of squish the steak back together.
Again, I'm going to ask the question, has anyone had a first week like Linda and not gone home?
Like how it just shows you how bad bubblegum is. Like, just avoid bubblegum.
Creaming soda. Like it's fatal because Linda, again, there is a reason why Linda at the end was laughing like a hyena. Because she's like, I can't believe I'm still here. Now they cut back to Noel comes back over and looks at Sura as they come out and he's like, you got skills. And she goes, yeah, I do. And he goes, I wasn't sure earlier. Just wait, Noel, because poor Sura's going to have a day. And then we got, I think it was Lottie who said it, but they all started doing it. It's like, oh, now we've got to do that thing where we get the pans out and wave them, do the bake-off thing. We're all doing the bake-off thing, in which we got everybody wafts. And there's waft.
Is this a new children's book? Everyone poops, everybody wafts.
Oh, I just thought it was REM releasing a new album.
Everybody wafts.
And the thing was, if ever you were going to see cakes knocked over, you would have thought that the wafting process was when it was going to happen. Didn't happen.
No.
So we'll just, before we get there quickly, the last thing that happened before we got there was everyone had their own strategy to get stuff out. Like, again, Linda's, I could just shake that with my hands thing was an option. Rowan, the mild-mannered gentleman that is Rowan, the last couple, he just grabs the tin, walks up to the bench and goes smack and hits it as hard as it can and they just fly out and he goes, that'll do.
He palm heel strikes the cake.
Then we get to the judging. Well, before we get to the judging, everyone is bringing their upside down pineapple cakes to the gingham altar and
if you've watched this episode,
Dave's got
this is the moment.
Very upside down on the carpet.
So essentially his were less upside down and they were the right way up.
So they come up, Sura puts hers down and goes, oh, no, shoo, as a fly is there and waves her. And the thing that was weird about it was, I got the waving a hand, but then she did this big sort of grand gesture arm pullback after she wafted the fly. And I don't know why she did the grand arm gesture, but it hit absolutely perfectly right in the middle of Dave's tray. By the way, Dave should probably be thankful because they didn't look great. And they just went flying everywhere, and Dave is just standing there looking at a tray of two in the right spot, one on its side and the rest on the floor.
I felt for Dave at that moment. I'm like, dude, if that was me, I would have been swearing my tits off. You could tell he's a professional. He kind of kept it together, just put his thing down and just walked away.
He put it down, he looked, and then he just calmly walked and sat at his bench.
And you knew he wasn't angry. He was just kind of like, I will swear. and I can't.
He's like,
I've been told I cannot.
I can't believe I'm on Bake Off and my technical's just been knocked over.
Yes.
Like, this wasn't the whole ice cream in the Baked Alaska challenge.
No,
it wasn't that, because that was malicious. This was a complete and utter accident. And poor Sura. But again, we often talk about the idea that hosts earn their money in the bad times. And can I just say, for a first challenge for these two, flying colours.
Yep.
The way they handled this. And again, you could be potentially worried if you said, oh, there's an upset contestant, you've got Noel Fielding and you've got Matt Lucas. Could be a little bit worried by that. But no, they were absolutely wonderful with it, including one of my favourites was when Noel goes, well, I personally blame Matt. And Matt goes, yes, I mean, you were just hypnotised by my beauty. It happens. And she's trying to cry, but at the same time, she's laughing her ass off. It's just this most beautiful moment of them knowing how to take the sting out of a moment.
And I'm so looking forward to seeing how this season pans out, because just with everything going on behind the scenes and the bubble and the mental health wise, I mean, Canadians, for example, they went into a bubble, but it's kind of like that's Canadian protocol. You know you're going to be away from your family. You're going to go live in a hotel room for X amount of weeks, blah, blah, blah. And sure, they had the COVID stuff on top of it. But in Bake Off, that's not it. You usually just travel home because everywhere in the UK is fucking 2 hours from each other. Like,
you can do it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So the judging. So her minds were too hot. And they said when the cream was piped on top of it, it just all slid. That was an interesting sound effect. So Mark, they said good flavour. However, they looked horrible. But good flavour. Then Lottie's were uniform with really good balance. Mac had some problems with heat, which meant everything fell off it. And also very doughy. Not what you want to hear. Rowan's were uniform. And again, uniform is a word we want. Laura's were darker. And then Loraya, all they said was not looking pretty. Then Mark, again, pronunciation key. They were very dark. It almost looked like they'd stuck to the tin. Because they did. They were bitter as well, and there was far too much caramel. Beyond that, they were great.
They were fine.
Peter's were lovely, and that's literally all they said. For Sura, they said the piping was excellent and it was very well balanced. Linda they said too hot first of all, and then they looked at it, and the comment was, what has happened to this?
The baking gods have gone, fuck these bakers, but particularly these ones.
And then Paul Hollywood looks at it and goes, it just looks like it's been pushed together. Cut back to her line before, I could just shape that. No. And they said that with David's, they judged the safe ones.
Yeah.
But they did say they looked dark. They said they did have a nice height and they did have a good flavour. So
I would like to think that they also went to the video ref for some
replays. So we had Linda in 12th, Mark in 11th, Loraya in 10th, Dave in 9th. Then we had Mac in 8th. We then had Mark in 7th. So again, the pronunciation's key. Laura was 6th. Hermione was 5th. Lottie was 4th. 3rd was Rowan, and I'm still somewhat shocked by that, to be honest. Peter was 2nd, and Sura won the challenge.
Oh, and
you've never seen a more upset winner in your life.
But it's not like, say, remember the great, what did she put in? Olivia, the rhubarb gate, where she actually used someone's rhubarb. Jeremy's, and got, I think, first in that technical, or like higher up. Like, that's an issue, but there was no comparison. Like, he could have served up his whole
and again, the infamous Great British Bake Off challenge is the Baked Alaska, where one of the bakers had their ice cream taken out of the freezer and left on a bench.
Yeah.
And then, when they got to like 15 minutes to go, he walks over and the ice cream's all melted because it's not been in the freezer. And so he takes the ring off and just throws the lot in the bin, which was, as they said, later on, though, they went, is your sponge okay? Yes. Was everything else okay? Yes. You should have just served us that. Don't worry about the ice cream. And he goes, I know, but I was really pissed off and I was really upset and I didn't know how to cope. Yeah. And you know what? I would have done the same thing as him.
Same.
But that was kind of malicious. And by the way, she sat in the background and laughed while that happened. Sura was genuinely crestfallen. And it was a complete accident. And Peter just said, he goes, Peter, and Dave goes, that was an accident. He goes, they happen. I'm not worried. And, like, no one was particularly worried about it apart from Sura.
Yeah, but you'd feel that way.
Oh, you feel horrible.
Yeah. It's and you'd be worried like, oh my gosh, I don't want to cause an issue, and it just
So we then cut to the judges and the hosts, and they're talking about the fact that they're in the bubble too.
Yes.
And can we just take a moment to understand what the hell their bubble must be like?
I presume that they've hired out the entirety of Downhall just for the hosts and judges. Noel has his whole wing and he gets around on a scooter. No, a Segway.
It's got to be a Segway.
Segway. And Matt has...
Hoverboard.
Yes. Matt has a chariot pulled by goats.
Yes, 100%.
Prue gets around with some hot guys on a sedan chair.
Yeah, and Paul Holly's got a bike. 100% Hollywood's got a bike. 100%.
A whole bevy of bikes.
Oh, yeah, he just rotates. Now, what I really loved about this was when they talked about, whoever had to leave and they were very, very, really sad. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, it's like at the end of the Hulk when they walk away, and then Noel and Paul both start singing the fucking Hulk music together, and you can just see Prue looking at them going, "Oh shit, I'm stuck with this." Like I can just imagine Prue looking at the two of them and going, "No, I'm not prepared to do this."
I know what's happening of an evening. They're watching all the Marvel comic
movies
in order because. There we have is Academy Award winning Lupita Nyong'o coming up for to be sculpted, and instead of naming any of her other more highly acclaimed movies, such
Black
as
Panther,
12 Years a Slave or something, it's Black Panther.
Black Panther. It's like again Paul Hollywood with the references straight away.
Yeah.
So the showstopper was a bust of your personal celebrity hero. You had 4 hours. Who would you have made?
Oh, Wonder Woman. Full stop. I know technically she's a character, not a celebrity, but quite frankly, she's in all of us. Like, we are Wonder Woman. And that's why I would have sculpted Wonder Woman. I mean, I could have gone just Linda Carter, but it's not specifically Linda Carter. It's all the Wonder Woman. Apart from that, I don't know, Jennifer Saunders.
Yeah, that would have actually...
Dawn French.
Dawn French.
Yeah.
I think you'd definitely...
Either or.
I think you definitely would have done Dawn French.
Yes.
So I love that Prue said that the risk of this challenge was in too much icing and too much buttercream.
Yeah.
Good. It's about fucking time somebody said it.
Yeah.
Because I get really frustrated in these challenges when you see them. There's a little bit of cake and then there's a mountain of icing and buttercream.
Rice Krispies.
And all that sort of stuff. And they said it had to principally be cake. You could use other things, but it had to principally be cake.
Yeah, but that said, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of Rice Krispie for construction.
I mean, it probably would have helped Freddie Mercury's jawline. We'll come to that. So, Linda. So, Matt Lucas officially became my hero for this series.
Yes.
When he was describing her Bob Marley. Linda is hoping her lemon and orange SpongeBob will be her redemption song. That is a double whammy if ever I've heard it.
Work, Maddie.
Oh, that was unbelievable work. I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like as well, when we're looking at who people did, Laura did Freddie Mercury. I think Freddie Mercury would have loved being made of elderflower.
Yes, and I know why his head exploded. He wanted to bake free. I want to bake free. And then, literally.
That would have been in Free From Week. Anyway, I know. I know. So, Larea was making Louise Bennett Coverley, who is a poet.
Yeah, that was good because I'd never heard of her, so we had to look her up, and it was great.
She's famous for poetry relating to identity, and she talked about the idea of, very important to her with, some Jamaican heritage and also, Durham, and she's like that mixture of things within her. But then covered it up by saying, I had the first go at this and she came out looking like Dobby.
Why not just go Dobby? This is
look,
my favourite house elf.
And given the way it ended up going, probably could have stuck with Dobby. Yeah, it possibly would have worked.
Elongate those ears.
Exactly.
Give it a sock.
Now,
turn that headscarf into a sock.
Sura's hero was David Attenborough.
Oh.
And we got Noel and Sura. Again, I think Noel's pairings have been so far bang on. Lottie and Sura seem to be where he's gravitating.
I was a bit worried at first because of their first interaction. Sura was a bit kind of like there was no like yes ending. It was quite like no, because he was like, just chuck it over you. Someone will pick it up. Just chuck it over. She's like, no, like, and it's like, oh, Sura, just, and then she's eased. She's softened.
And then we got to the
There's
bit
growth.
And then we got to the bit about it won't be people upset if Attenborough's not made properly. But the animal kingdom.
Oh, absolutely.
Voles.
Gerbils.
Marmosets. The odd pigeon. And like any chance you get in comedy, and this is something that most people in comedy will tell you, if you get a chance to use voles, use a vole.
Absolutely.
Because what a comedy word
Buy a
vole is.
vole.
Buy a vole. Oh, da, 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 da. Now, Mark, again, pronunciation matters, was very clever in terms of he did Charles Darwin.
I think that was a great choice because he just made him look like a statue.
Well, that was one thing, but
grey.
the other thing was he said, I've been quite clever, I've done someone who's dead, so they can't get insulted by what I've made.
I mean, other people went that way too. Freddie Mercury, not alive. David Bowie.
And of course, I love the pun of the originger of the species.
Yes,
which was quite a good pun. You've got to think about it a little bit. Now
he could have flavoured the outside in Grey Goose and call it Galapag Grey Goose.
Oh no!
Because it's both gay at Grey and Galapagos.
No. Anyway, Lottie. Now Lottie, I love the fact that Lottie decided to do something a bit unusual, and she made someone who's been in the tent. She made Louis Theroux. Now,
he looked a little Rolf Harris-esque.
He did
towards the end.
So he also looked a bit worn, but if you've seen Louis Theroux, especially after all the things he's been to, he looks a bit worn. I love the fact that they said, well, you should know how he tastes then. And Paul Hollywood looks at Matt and goes, he tastes coconutty. Now, then we cut to the man who is on another celestial plane.
Hi, Rowan.
Rowan, again, it was about making a bust of one of your heroes. Would anybody really call Marie Antoinette their hero?
Maybe she's the reason he got into baking, because she did say, allegedly, let them eat cake. I mean, I know that was a slander afterwards, but maybe he heard that as a child and went, yes, let them eat cake and let me be the one to give them the cake.
It was his Whitney Houston greatest love of all moment. But...
And she really didn't do anything for anyone else except herself.
He spoke about her with a lot of reverence, yes, her Majesty. It's like, dude, her head ended up in a basket.
Oh, no, she did give the shape of champagne glasses, didn't she?
That's another one of those
rumours.
But again, if your greatest contribution is they made champagne glasses shaped around your boobs...
I mean, you should make champagne glasses shaped around my boobs. One, you'll get a fuck ton more champagne.
How many bottles would you like to put in there?
Just 2 bottles of Bollinger.
2 bottles of Bolly.
It's very...
This is how we do bra sizing now. What are you? 1, 2 bottles of Bolly?
Yes. Bolly and a half.
A bolly and a half. But he spoke about Marie Antoinette with far too much reverence for my liking. It really, as a historian...
And calling her Majesty. I'm like, isn't that blasphemous?
I just really enjoy the bourgeoisie.
I'm all about exploiting the lower class, taxing them to the hilt for my own follies. I want to pretend I'm a simple peasant girl in a simple folly, fucking other people.
Do you know how many of the lower classes play flute? None at all. I've checked. I've checked. I'd like to think that because Rowan is on another celestial plane, that Marie Antoinette actually took over his body for this challenge and was trying to put her own publicity forward.
Yes.
I think that's what was going on. Now, Peter went a bit more simple. He basically went with a Victoria sponge. And... he made Sir Chris Hoy the cycling gold medalist. Mm-hmm. Now, I think he missed a trick.
Why?
Think about what he could have loaded a Lance Armstrong cake with. He went with simple flavours, but imagine what a Lance Armstrong cake could have had.
And what's this white powder?
The number, and you could have had like a Coke can next to it to signify where the needles were in. Which is what they did. They put the needles in a Coke can to get him out of the truck. There were so many opportunities. What is this full of? What do you want? There's an entire medicine cabinet in there. So many things you could have loaded the Lance Armstrong. It could have had hidden gems. You know, like cut it open and like lollies pour out representing all the drugs of the rainbow. Could have been fantastic, but no.
Pinata cake.
But no, you had to go with the cyclist who spent his entire career bagging everyone out for using drugs. Why?
I know.
It's a boring cake. Wonderful man. Boring cake.
I mean, he's ethical as fuck.
Then Dave. Now, look, everybody felt a bit sorry for Dave, I think, after the technical. I kind of wonder if his showstopper could have ended up on the floor as well.
He's probably gone Sura. She's like, I'm not doing it again.
Not again. Once is enough. I'm not doing it again. I'm not.
He's known as the bake-off assassin.
He's putting garbage behind his cake, hoping the flies will come.
It's like, it's now a banana cake. I need bananas. There's no bananas going in your cake. Oh, what's this peel doing in front of Sura?
Oh no, there seems to be a fly buzzing around my cake. Can you shoo it for me? Look,
it's one of those voles, quick.
the scary part about this was it probably looks more human than Tom DeLonge does now.
It was a great choice, and I just liked, Matt Lucas going, is this the kind of music you listen to, Noel? And Noel's like, yes, no, I like Black Sabbath.
And then they had this conversation around the different types of music that they like, which was fascinating.
And who was it?
Peter Whittaker.
Peter Whittaker, that's right.
Yeah, and then they cut back again, and I was like, I like Black Sabbath. But Tom DeLonge is an interesting choice, but again, he's not looking. If you've seen Tom DeLonge lately, he looks 900.
Look,
so the cake was accurate.
Yeah, he's probably going to hit Dave up for plastic surgery.
Probably.
Fondant surgery.
And again, then we got the Lupita Nyong'o cake. The key to that was the isomalt eyes.
They looked great.
They looked great, but creepy as fuck.
I know. The rest of the cake, the dress looked amazing. The dress looked
the
really
eyes
good.
were like the fact that she was recreating the eyes out of isomalt, and they were that. I'm like, did you actually just steal someone's eyes? Is that what happened?
I'd like isomalt eyes. The girl with the isomalt eyes. Like, it's a new Beatles tribute.
Now, again, and much like Dave with Tom DeLonge, the benefit being he's a bit craggy-faced, Mac made Bill Bryson. Mm-hmm. Again, it's clever to do a craggy-faced man.
Yeah.
I love Bill Bryson, but he's a craggy-faced man. Easy to do. Although I like the attempt at making the hair. And then Matt Lucas, do me.
Any leftovers?
Then we had the battle of who was going to lose part of the model. And the winner was Freddie Mercury.
Oh,
whose head basically exploded.
He baked free.
I do like the fact, though, that they made sure that when Freddie's head did explode, the front teeth were still there.
Oh, they were integral to supporting the rest of the head.
I believe they did hold the head up at the end of it. Now, back to my favourite person in the world. Because Linda turned around to the camera and said, "Time flies when you're having fun." And Lottie took this as a personal insult.
It was an affront to her humanity.
Who said they're having fun? Who said fun? This is not fun.
I presume that's what she says when she's going through the panto crew. Okay, who brought the fun into this place?
There will be no enjoyment in this pantomime. Look, there has never been any enjoyment in my pantomimes. It's certainly not going to happen tonight. But then we got...
Or maybe she's just around fun too much and she just wanted a fun-free bake. She's like, can I just go one day with no fun?
Then we had Noel Fielding.
No shenanigans.
Then we had Noel Fielding hitting
No lollies being thrown at me.
Then we had Noel Fielding hitting on a cake.
It reminded me of, in The Office where they talk about the erotic cake and you
Yes.
get all things, and Phyllis is like, as a connoisseur of erotic cakes, it's good to know that there are options out there to be represented.
No, I've never been attracted to a cake before. But then we got, the last part was Laura being really scared to put Freddie Mercury's head on the cake.
It's like, just give Freddie head.
And at that point, Sura stepped in. Now, Sura did this in such a way that was both incredibly motivating and wonderful.
Yeah.
And extremely terrifying. Do it! Put it on there now! Just put it on there now!
And then just putting the wrong little bit on there. It's like, no, that's the wrong bit. Okay, it's going to poke through his head. It's fine.
Intense as all hell.
Yeah.
And then they finished. Everyone walks outside and they're all sitting in the chairs. And suddenly Sura goes, no! And Attenborough's upside down.
Yes.
And she runs. I'd never run in my life. And she sprints back in there and like puts the piping bags behind his head. She's like, he's having a lay down. It's a travel pillow.
Yes. He's on planes so much, seeing all the wildlife around the world. He's just having a little nap.
So Rowan. Now, Rowan, of course, tried to make shoe buns for Marie Antoinette's hair, which didn't happen.
No.
They didn't rise at all. They were flat.
Yeah, but he was quick to improvise. It's like rice paper. I can use rice paper.
So Paul notices that he overpromises but can't produce.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yep. Now,
like next time, just say I'm going to make a biscuit. It's coming up to biscuit week. Just say you're going to bake a biscuit. Then produce 12.
My big question was, why were they all cringing when they cut into Marie Antoinette? Given that that's what happened.
I know. I mean...
Oh, no, they're going to cut Marie Antoinette's head. Sorry, been there, done that.
She's fine.
This is real to life. What he needed was jam to spurt out of the neck.
And yes, how many... Just what they should have had...
Guillotine.
Constructed a little mini guillotine to really get the effect.
If anyone was going to have a guillotine, Rowan should have had a guillotine. Now, Lottie, they said the good news was it was recognisable. And they said all the flavours were there, but the cake was a bit dry. Now, interestingly enough, I wrote down everything they said, and I'm just going to list a couple of them. Lottie was recognisable, flavours were a bit dry. Mac, recognisable, good flavour, but a bit dry. We had a couple of other ones here where it was like a bit dry, a bit dry, a bit dry. There was a lot of a bit dry in the feedback. Seemed that a lot of people were struggling with baking this huge size of cake.
Moisture consistency was a big thing. Either it's too wet, like some people's, or too dry.
Now they commented.
Too dry.
Now they commented that Linda's Bob Marley didn't have a mouth, which was kind of the most important part of Bob Marley. They did say though the flavours were absolutely delicious, but she had lime in there, and that works. Peter's was dramatic. It was clever. Prue was worried that it would be like a pudding inside, but they said it was lovely and the flavour was absolutely perfect.
And I think he was smart because his head was smaller than
the body. Yes, which meant that it didn't worry about the crushing it.
Yeah.
Dave, they said it looked a bit like a caricature. My response was, have you seen Blink-182? No. The problem was they said that it was a bit toothpastey because there was mint, and they said it went very toothpastey instead. The texture and the flavour let him down. Now, Mark made David Bowie.
No, he didn't.
No, okay. Mark said he made David Bowie. That's better. And I love that Prue was really judgy on that one. She looked at him and went, that's about as far away from David Bowie as you can get. And to be fair, Mark went, no, I agree 100%, not even close. Dense cake, overbaked, but the flavour was quite good. Then we had the next cake up was our poet. They said not a good resemblance.
No,
unfortunately.
But the headscarf was right, necklace was right.
The other problem was she put chili in there.
And she put Scotch bell.
Chili and ginger. And they went just overwhelming and far too strong.
Scotch bonnet, sorry, not Scotch bell.
Yeah. So it was far too strong.
Much.
Too strong.
We've seen chocolate and chili done really well, and when it's good, but when it's bad, it's burning your mouth out.
And then when we got to we got to Lupita Nyong'o, in cake form, Noel's crush.
Yes.
In cake form. And apparently when they tasted that, they said the fondant, first of all, looked excellent.
Yeah.
Now, the face was... but the fondant work was actually quite good.
It was someone else cosplaying as Lupita.
Yes. But the flavours, they said, was amazing.
Yep.
They loved the flavours. Mark, the other one, they said it looked very accurate to Charles Darwin. The flavour was good and it wasn't overdone with spice. Sura referred to David Attenborough as having a nap.
Which he probably was at the time.
Now, they said neat work, very clear who it was. The flavours were nice and it wasn't too dry. And then Laura. Now, Prue laughed when Laura brought Freddie up. And she goes, you can't laugh! And what happened? Well, he looked great. Then his head exploded. She goes, look at the jacket. The jacket. And Prue's like, jacket's amazing.
True. The jacket did look really good. And I think if the head hadn't exploded, it would have probably been one of the best.
Well, they said the flavours were delicious. They said the cake was really moist. But they said that was the problem. Was that the cake was moist. So then we had Star Baker was Peter.
Yep,
well
deserved.
Very
Easy.
obvious. Now, again, when they got to the going home person, I'm assuming that Linda was ready.
Yes.
But Larea, unfortunately, you went bubblegum, you went creaming soda, you went home.
Yes, there's a few unforgivable flavours there.
Not what you want to do. You don't want to be that bold at the start. So that is episode 1 of the Great British Bake Off. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been a bit of a bumper on this one.
Yep.
Obviously, thank you, everyone, as well, who's listening to our finalising of the Great Canadian Baking Show.
Yep.
Obviously, we've got 2 more episodes of that. And then there'll be a big announcement around, obviously, what is to follow the last episode of the Great Canadian Baking Show. And if you've listened to our podcast before, you know what follows one of those series. It is Baking's Night of Nights.
It really is the end of award season, isn't it? You know, like people think that
Oscars have happened.
You know, the Emmys have been and gone.
Emmys, Oscars, who cares
MTV
about those?
Music Awards. I mean, you think Cardi
Independent
B
Spirit Awards.
And is it Monica the Stallion, like scissoring on stage? Megan the Stallion. I'm down with the kids. Scissoring on stage is big. You ain't seen nothing yet.
You ain't seen the Virgies. So
You haven't seen scissors scissoring. Like, come on.
You haven't seen Scissor Sisters.
That's edgy.
You haven't seen Scissor Sisters, and to be fair, no one's seen them for a while. No. Anyway, we will be back next week to talk about the second episode of the Great British Bake Off. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
We'll catch you all later.
Just to remind you that the corgis will be arriving shortly, Kristie. Please keep tuned.